I knew a man, an African-American man, who was born here in Baltimore in 1908, in the days of segregation. He grew up on this street, played in this neighborhood. His father was a porter on a train, and his mother was a school teacher. When he graduated from high school, his parents scraped to put him through college and scraped again to put him through law school. He wanted to go to the University of Maryland Law School, but he knew they wouldn't admit him because of his race. So he went to Howard University Law School in Washington, D.C., and was graduated first in his class. 2 years later, he turned around and sued the University of Maryland Law School for discrimination and won, and his client became their first black student. For the next few decades, he spent a lot of time in court. He became America's leading civil rights lawyer. He represented and defended men accused of rape and murder in the Deep South, risking his life to save theirs. While trying to save two men from being lynched, he was almost lynched himself. He was the bravest man I've ever known. In 1954, he argued a landmark case before the Supreme Court that challenged the legacy of Plessy versus Ferguson, widely known as Brown versus Board of Education. That man, who was a victim of segregation, who was a lawyer for the NAACP, who argued Brown versus Board, that was Thurgood Marshall. In 1967, he became the first African-American justice ever to serve on the United States Supreme Court. And I had the honor of serving as one of his law clerks there. Marshall understood the benefit of having a written constitution. Laws can change with the whims of the people, he said, but the Constitution does not change when mores and customs change. In Plessy, the Supreme Court tragically bent to the customs of the day and created the legal problem the Warren Court faced in Brown.
When Chief Justice Warren writes Brown, he realizes that it's going to be monumental.
It's probably the most iconic case in all of our legal history.
It's almost a moral decision. It is good when those decisions are unanimous.
So Warren lobbies his brethren, and he eventually convinces all of them to come aboard, even the ones who were a bit skeptical about whether this was a good idea or not. Brown says separating the races, just to separate them, is not equal.
I think separate but equal is a different form of being afraid of other people.
You can't have something separate be equal.
The court said the mere fact of racial separation creates inequality because it is the government creating a second-class citizenship.
It's a badge of inferiority. It's a stigma.
In the next decade, a series of landmark laws and lawsuits outlaws segregation in places of public accommodation, from buses and trains to restaurants and hotels.
Brown versus Board of Education absolutely changed my life. I went to Cornell University when Cornell University decided that it was time for Cornell not to be basically all rich white people. I would have gone to a small women's college or a small black college, and I just wouldn't be who I am.